See how this goes. All right, we're up there now. Uh, we are happy for you to join us here tonight. Um, we're here in Tony's office for tonight. So on Wednesday nights, what we're kind of going to be doing is doing something a little bit similar to what we normally do on Wednesdays. We'll be going over some prayer requests, going through the prayer list that we've got right here. And then Tony's going to give us a short uh, devotional on worship. I think worship we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk about worship tonight. We're going to be kind of coming at you with some different things over the next few weeks. And then hopefully we can get back together after that. So tonight we are going to go ahead and get started. It's 5 o'clock, so if you miss anything at the beginning, if you join us later, remember it'll be posted on our Facebook page and on the YouTube page, so you can go back and watch from the very beginning what we are going to be doing. So we will post this again later, so if you miss anything, don't worry, you'll be able to go back and watch it again. But tonight, some of the prayer requests that we received, I posted on our Facebook page a post I'm talking about tonight, and an opportunity to give prayer requests there. And then we also, if you call the office, you can leave those there. If none of us are here, me and Tony are kind of in and out with what's going on right now. So if nobody's here, just leave a message, and we will get that. We'll get you included. So you can comment on our Facebook page, message us there, call the church office, and you can just leave a message on the answering machine if we don't answer, and we will get it and we will put it out there. Tonight, some of the ones that we have is the family of Bruce Daniel. He's the brother of Mary Sipes. He passed away March 23rd. The funeral is going to be limited to family only because of the restrictions from the coronavirus at this time. So it will be restricted to family only. It will be Friday afternoon, so if you would be in prayer for them as they go through a difficult time, which is made just a little bit more difficult by the situation at hand. We also want to be in prayer for the family of Martha Gilpin. She's the sister of Carol Fulkerson. She passed away March 24th. Also remember the Hagen family, her sisters and brothers and their families. Kind of the same thing. That funeral will also be kind of restricted in who can be there because of the coronavirus. So we want to especially be praying for them, since it's a little bit more difficult to get there and to see anyone with kind of some of the stuff going on. Joe Oliphant had a heart attack. He is in HMH recovering. I think one of the last messages that Tony got said he should hopefully be home in 4 or 5 days. So that's good news that he is recovering from that. So just continue to be in prayer for him throughout this recovery. Julie Bewley, who's a friend of Kim Thompson, she had a surgery, and she's not doing so well right now. So we want to continue to be in prayer for her recovery, and for her healing. I also want to continue to pray. I think as a church, for many, many years, we've continued to pray for Brenda McDaniel, and we want to continue that prayer. The clinical trial that she was in Houston, she's no longer a part of that. There is hopefully another drug, another avenue that she can go, but we don't know much about that, and she won't know much about that probably for a few weeks. But we want to just continue to pray for her, because she will no longer be going down to Houston. We know there's a lot of other prayer requests, you know, around the world, and especially here in our community. Things are not the same as they used to be. People's way of life has been changed. Uh, you know, a lot of things have changed for a lot of people, and as humans, personally speaking, I don't enjoy change, and I don't think most of us do. But this is just one of those things that we will get through. We know that. One of the praises that we received on Facebook was from Donna Keene, and she said, her praise was that through all of this, God is still in control, and we know that. We know that God is still in control through all of this, and that's what gives us the peace and assurance to be able to continue to do the things that we do. So we're just going to spend a few moments in prayer. I'm going to pray for people on this list that we have. I'm going to pray for our country. I'm going to pray for people around the world as we continue to go through this. So if you would, just pray with us wherever you are. Dear Lord, we just first want to thank you for the opportunity uh, to be able to stream this service. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for the opportunity um, that we can be here tonight. Lord, we know there are people, there are families uh, all over the world uh, that are hurting, uh, that are in need. Dear Lord, we know that there are people right here around us who are in need. And dear Lord, I just ask that as we continue to go through this time, as we continue to deal with this coronavirus, that Lord, that we would be able to help with those needs, that we would see those needs, that we would reach out in the best way that we can to help those around us. Lord, I just ask that you would be with the family of Bruce Daniel and Martha Gilpin as they go through a hard time, Lord, and that you would just give them a peace about the situation, Lord. It's what they're going through is never easy, and when you limit who can be there to comfort you, Lord, it makes it harder. And we just ask that you would be with them, that you would let them know that we are praying for them. Lord, I just ask that you would also be with Joe Oliphant and his family as he recovers from a heart attack. Lord, I also ask that you would be with Julie Bewley as she continues to recover from her surgery. And Lord, I always ask that you would continue to be with Brenda as she continues uh, to battle uh, to battle this cancer, Lord. And we know um, that that you are in control through all of these situations. Um, and Lord, we trust you, and we just want to thank you again. We want to praise you in everything. And we just ask that you would bless this time and that you would just continue to be with us as we go through our daily lives. In your name we pray. Amen. Uh, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tony. We'll cover a few more things kind of at the end, but I want to go ahead and turn it over to him. He's going to give us a little bit of information on worship. So.
Well, James, you and I have talked today, and I told you that when I get into this short Bible study, if you have anything you want to put into it, feel free to do it, because I think this is a very important topic for us to talk about. I think it's very important that we understand what worship is. And as we spend these few minutes together, I hope that we can take this one short passage or these few verses out of this. It's a long passage, but these few verses, and we can learn from them, and hopefully we'll all realize how special it is to be able to worship. Because I think that sometimes that we think that the only place we can worship is in a church building. And a church building is really nice. It's great that we live in a nation where we can have a building, we can have the facilities that we have. But worship is something that takes place more than just in the church building. And so as I thought about this, the question came to my mind, what is worship? And the one thing that I did is I did some studying, was realized that there is not, nowhere in the Bible does it define what worship is. There's a lot of places it talks about things that we would consider worship, but just to come down and say, this is specifically worship. But each one of us have a thought of what it is for us. So I'm sure you do. I've asked you to think about it, so I'm sure you have. And so at a point, I'd like for you to tell us what that is. I put down, this is my thought, that it is recognizing that He, God, is sovereign. So then all that we do should be worship because it's to bow before Him. So how do you feel about that, James?
Well, when we were talking about this earlier, I went and looked up the definition because, like you said, the Bible doesn't define it, but we have defined it as men. So um, in the dictionary, it says that worship is to honor or show reverence for a divine being or supernatural power, to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. Uh, and I think that last definition that it gives, to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion, this isn't something that should be simple. This isn't something that we should do lightly. I mean, this is saying with great or extravagant respect, honor, and devotion. Um, Hebrews chapter 12, verses 28 and 29 says, therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus, let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. I think, it doesn't, once again, it doesn't define worship, but that's another one of those verses that says, you know, we should be grateful for, what we've been given, a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And I think we've seen that in these last few weeks as churches all around the world are worshiping in ways that they either never thought possible or they never thought to try or they never thought they would be doing. I mean, for us this Sunday, who would have ever thought that we would be holding a worship service with 3 people, but we would have, I think when I looked today, we were over 1,000 people who had viewed it, and I think that's amazing. Obviously some of those watched it multiple times maybe, but that's amazing. That's something that we never thought. I never thought. When I accepted this position, it was not something that I ever thought we would be doing. Me, you, and Mallory over here in the MRC, worshiping just us 3 together and broadcasting for the whole world to see. That was never something that I kind of thought would happen, but I'm so glad that it did. And I think further on down in your lesson, I've got something else I want to say, but I don't want to give too much away. So you go ahead and keep
Go ahead
going.
and talk.
You go ahead.
I get to talk
Yeah,
again.
you get to talk more now.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I'd like to say before I get in, I've got, I think, 4 little points here that I want to bring out. But one of the things I think is really important in worship, and here I'm talking about corporate worship when we come together. And even though we will not be in a building together as a church family, and we don't know how many weekends that's going to last, we're going to be obedient and we're going to be responsible as a church family. But we can worship together. But I think the one thing that that I probably missed out on younger in life before I surrendered to preach, and that was that I didn't prepare myself for worship in the sense that we talk about the collective or the body coming together. I think that's important that we understand that worship is more than going and listening to the praise songs or the regular songs that we sing or the preaching. And so we've worshiped. Worship is preparing ourselves so that God can speak to our hearts so that we can continue as we go out into the community to glorify Him because of our worship, our surrender, our bowing to Him. So there's the story that I looked at is the woman at the well, and you get down to verse 21, well 20. The woman said to him, this is John chapter 4, by the way. In verse 19 it says, the woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Then she said in the next verse we have recorded, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship. Now, what I want to pick up on is the next 4 verses because I think they clarify who we are and who she was and what Jesus was saying about how we're to worship. Now, I think we ought to realize because we participate in a nationwide, well, really a worldwide program, the Secret Church, every year. And I hope that anyone listening to me, if you're where you can be a part of one this year, you will. We may have to do a little different here than what we had planned, but they're making adjustments with it too. But one of the things it shows us is and tells us as we study about different nations and how people are, that it would surprise us where people have to gather to have corporate worship. Yeah. We're so used to being right here in a church. But the first thing we'd ask, where is the place? And that's what we saw there in verse 21. Here's what Jesus said. She said, you say Jerusalem, we say on the mountain. And Jesus said in John 4:21 to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. Now I want you to think about that. There's no particular place. You can't say this is the only place. You know, we're not it. We're not a lone ranger. Our church isn't the only place. For those who God places in a local church, they ought to be there every Sunday at least as a body to say to the whole world that we're a part of this body and we come together corporately to worship our God, our Lord Jesus Christ. So, yes, we can worship Him anywhere. Yes, there is a time for us as a local body of believers to worship Him together. But because we can't be together over these next weeks physically, doesn't mean that we can't worship Him spiritually as a body. So that's one thing. And the next thing that we see is who do we worship? And I'm afraid that in America that we find ourselves, even in churches, worshiping things that we don't need to worship. And we need to be careful about that. Now, I'm a pastor, and I've pastored quite a few years. And I don't think that anybody would say they worship me, or I hope there wouldn't be anybody. I would pray over the years there's people who've respected me, but they understand that I'm a man like they are, and that I have a calling just as they have a calling, and mine is to be a pastor. But we get to where we worship things, and one of the biggest things we worship is our buildings. Yeah. It becomes a god to us. That if we don't have this particular building, then we've lost something in worship. And I think we need to be careful about that, because if you look back at that verse that I just read, the last two, well, not just the last 2 verses, words, maybe the last 5 words he says, in Jerusalem, you worship. But he says, we worship whom? The Father. Not the building, not the church in general, the people, not the denomination, but we worship God the Father. Being a Baptist doesn't get you to heaven. Being any kind of a Baptist, and we're Heinz 57. There's all kinds of Baptists. Yeah. Being a Catholic doesn't get you to heaven. Being a Lutheran doesn't get you to heaven. Being a Church of Christ doesn't get you to heaven. Being a Methodist doesn't get you to heaven. Being a Pentecostal doesn't get you to heaven. I'm going to have to quit because there's a whole lot more.
Go all day.
The only thing that will get you to heaven is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And that comes because he loved us enough to come to this earth, to die on a cross, that through dying on that cross, that the shedding of his blood could cover yours and my sins and anybody's. And so that's the excitement of all. So we don't worship the persons who carry the message. We don't worship the church, which is the vehicle which we as individuals use. We worship the Father.
Yeah.
And he says if we will keep our mind on him, he will keep us in perfect peace. That's powerful. That's what Isaiah tells us. If you'll keep your mind on me, I'll keep you in perfect peace. So where do we worship? Wherever. Corporately we come together. First Baptist Church has a building on Main Street. The church comes together in that building at 709 Main Street when we can. That is where we corporately worship. But we as a church are not that building. We're the people. And so now the church is all over the place in Hardin, LaRue, and Hart County, and we're worshiping there. And then we come down to ask who the people are, the true worshipers. I'm going to read a verse and I'll turn it back to you, I think, right here. The true worshipers, look what he says, and this is powerful. In verse 23, he says, 4:23, but the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. Now, who is it that's going to worship him? The people who worship in spirit and in truth. It's not just, ho hum, I'm going to church, shuck it off. I got my worship in today. I was there for worship hour. You can be a worship hour every day of the thing and do nothing, and there's no worship.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said this to you, I mean, I don't know that I had been here for more than a week. I don't even know if I was on staff yet.
No, you weren't. I want to clarify that. You weren't on staff.
So I don't even think I was on staff when I told you this, and I said that, we have, and it's not just us. I mean, it's churches all over, and we have people that want to come in. They want to sit through the worship service, but that there's nothing more to it, and that misses the whole point of why we're here. I mean, it misses and messes up what I read earlier in Hebrews 12, 28 and 29. It says, "Let us offer God acceptable worship with reverence and awe." And I think, if we really sit down and we focus on the God that we serve, the Father that He says here that we worship. I mean, there should be nothing that we aren't willing to do to worship Him, just to spread His gospel, and coming here just to listen to a worship service is missing the whole point. If you worship for 1 hour on Sunday and that's the end of it, you've completely missed 90% of what the Bible tells us. It's not a 1 hour a week thing, and I think that we talk about that later. But worship is 24/7, 365. There's not a day, there's not a moment, there's nothing that should stop us from worshiping Him. And worshiping is not singing, it's not listening to preaching. It can be those things, but it's not limited to those things. Worshiping is sharing the gospel. It's living a life pleasing and acceptable to Him. All of those things are worship. We try to tie it down and we try to limit worship, but those things are not what define worship. Worship is, I think, one of the definitions of, or it's kind of a thing about worship that I was reading the other day, is that worship is the overflow of the Holy Spirit within us. And we're called to be filled with the Spirit all the time. So we should have a constant overflow of, of that same Spirit in us that we should pour out into other people. Worship is it's, we've talked about things that it's not, but it's also not, it's not for us. Worship is for Him. We come to worship Him, not to better ourselves, not to think about ourselves, but for Him and for Him alone. I think that if we come to church for any other reason but to glorify Him, then we've messed up completely. We've missed the point of why we're supposed to be here.
Well, another place, and I think you'll help me here after I say a few things about it, is the power. Where is the power? Look here in verse 24 of that same chapter. God is a spirit, and those who worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Now, that represents more than God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That spirit there is the proper heart attitude. What is my attitude? What is my heart attitude? When I come, and I can say this authoritatively because it's been my life over a period of time. As you know, and I've told you many times, I don't attend revivals outside the church. That's just been, I've never done that. That's not where I am, but I watch a lot of the men that I respect on television because I want to learn, because I feel these men have been down the road. They have things that I can learn from, and therefore I spend a lot of time just doing that. And on the iPhone, I'll listen to them on my phone. Peggy and I usually listen. I kiddingly say the best way to go to sleep is turn a sermon on. So we put a sermon on every night by someone. Yeah. Usually the next morning I get up and I run it forward 10 or 15 minutes where I figure I quit and I listen to the rest of it. Mm-hmm. It's important to me that my heart is right, that I want to learn. And so therefore the attitude, the heart attitude toward what we get out of it is our attitude. But what I started to say at the beginning, I've never heard anyone, and Peggy and I grew up down in East Tennessee, as many people know, in a little old town called Huntsville, Tennessee. I was raised in Logout Baptist Church, and that ought to tell you something about where I was. She was raised in the White Rock Baptist Church down there. They were a little more lively than we were, but both of us raised in churches where there was shouting, where you had the altar prayer, and they'd say, Brother Jeffers, you start the prayer, and when he started, then everybody else prayed with him. And that's scary to people who've never been around it. They think something's gone wrong. But that's the background that we grew up in. And then growing up in that background, I had to listen. I shouldn't say had to. I guess I did. Mom and Dad took us when we was young. But I listened to a lot of preaching. But after I got old enough to realize the importance of it, I don't know, James, that I've ever listened to anybody, whether I liked their way of delivery, whether I agreed with everything they said. There was a nugget in there that God always had for me. Mm-hmm. And I listened, and I wanted to hear that nugget because I wanted to be challenged to be a better Christian. And that's the same way today. I will listen to a sermon, and a lot of times, even while they're preaching, I'm praying, God, you just touched me. You just reminded me, and I've sinned right there. I've let that thing that I've not done or should have done or could have done, or maybe I did it and I shouldn't have even been doing it. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. But you've got to come with a spirit of wanting to hear the message that God has. Mm-hmm. And you got to do another thing is respect the fact that the man in that pulpit is preaching because he believes that's the very message that God would have. Over these 50 plus years that I've pastored, there's been many a time that I've argued with God. Why do you want me to preach this? They're not going to want to hear it. I've just done it, Lord. I just said it. Why did I need to say it again? But yet in my heart, in my spirit, I felt like that's where I needed to go. So if I needed to go there, it may have only been for me, but it's more than possible that there was somebody that needed to hear it that hadn't heard it before.
Yeah.
And I'll have people come by me on Sunday mornings and they'll say, Preacher, that was meant for me. It may not have been meant for everybody else in there, and some of them may have been totally bored to their gourd with it. But God had a reason. So what I'm saying is, when we go into that, let's go with the respect that God is using this message,
Yeah.
that I might learn something from it. If I quickly tell a story real quick, and then I'm going to close and turn it over to you. I heard a lady give the testimony of wanting her dad to come to Jesus. He was getting older and he was lost, and she had prayed, God, please let my daddy be saved. Please let him be saved. He wouldn't go to church. He wouldn't have anything to do with it. And he came to visit them. They lived in a different town. And she asked him, Daddy, will you go to church with me Sunday? And to her great surprise, he went. We had the greatest pastor in the world, she thought. Man, I can't wait for my daddy to hear him. And her daddy gets up and preaches about so and so begat so and he died. So and so begat so and so who begat so and he died. And went through all that litany, and she cried. She wept. She said, I brought my daddy to church, and one time, and this is the message. And I can't believe that he didn't preach. And she went home, and her daddy went on back home to where he was from. And that night, late in the night, the phone rang, and it was her daddy on the other end crying. And he said, honey, can you tell me? Can you tell me how to be saved? He said, you know that preacher today? Everybody that he talked about, they died. And one day I'm going to die, and I want to know about Jesus. We don't know what God has in store with that message. Yeah. But if we'll go with a heart and the proper attitude to hear, guess what, James? God will speak to us.
Yeah, definitely. And, worship is important. We hope that over these next few weeks, you continue to worship with us on Sunday mornings. Every Sunday at 11, we will be live streaming a worship service. Start with a little introduction, a few announcements, and then one or two songs, and then Tony or myself will bring the message. I think this Sunday you're going to finish up Jonah. We were in a series. Tony was preaching a little series of Jonah. He preached chapters 1 and 2. Last week we had a sermon on fear, just to kind of deal with that as we continue to move through this time. And this Sunday we're going to finish up with Jonah chapters 3 and 4. So I invite you to come listen to that. I want to give you a challenge. We have learned about worship. We've learned about preparing our hearts. We've learned about who we worship. We've learned about the place that we worship. And so what I want you to do, sometime over the next week or so, when you have a little bit of free time, which most of us have more than we did before. So in your free time, I want you to sit down and I want you to read the book of James. Not because my name's James or anything other than what it says. If you just go through and look at some of the kind of subtitles over the words, it says, hearing and doing the word, the sin of partiality, faith without works is dead, warning against worldliness, boasting about tomorrow, warning to the rich, patience in suffering. And it's 5 chapters. That's all the book of James is. In my Bible, it's 3 pages. I think we looked it up in Tony's, which is large print. It's 5 pages. So it's 3 to 5 pages, maybe longer. If you have a study Bible, but it's probably not the whole page then. So 3, 5, 6 pages maybe that you'll be reading. Shouldn't take you very long. Just sit down and just read through that. it's such a powerful book. It really gives us lessons, I think, that we can all apply to our daily lives. And so I just would challenge you to sit down over these next few weeks, read the book of James, read those 5 chapters, and just let it speak to you. Um, I do want to remind you before we kind of hop off here, if you have prayer requests, you can call the church office. If one of us doesn't answer, we're probably in and out, going somewhere, doing this, whole list of things. We may just be practicing our social distancing and staying at home for a little bit longer. So call the church office, comment on the post, I think right below, should be right below this one. You can comment there. I'll post a new one next week. You can comment there. You can message us there. Just any way that you can get it to us, just let us know. We want to pray for you. We want to pray with you. We want to do the best we can to continue with that. So every Wednesday we'll be doing that. I encourage you to join us Sunday, 11 o'clock. That should be the next time that we go live, unless we do another something over the next few days. You never know around here. We like to shake things up every now and then. But we will be coming together for sure Sunday. We will be posting another Bible study lesson, hopefully on Sunday before the worship service. Hopefully there won't be any technical difficulties like there were last week. You never know what's going to happen. So we will be working on that. I do want to remind you about giving. You can send it in through the post office, call the church office. We'll have someone come and pick it up from you. Or you can give online. You just go to our website, www.fbsonora.org, and there's a tab at the top that says Give. Also, I think this went well tonight with the new streaming service thing that we have set up. So we will probably be doing that Sunday. So we will be looking at that as well. So should be able to view it. Should be able to view the worship service on our website Sunday morning under that live stream tab, as long as everything goes smoothly. But this will be posted on our Facebook page and our YouTube page. Regardless, all of our stuff will be posted to at least those 2 places, and hopefully our Vimeo page. We're limited to what we can kind of upload there due to size restrictions, so we'll be kind of working on that. But YouTube, Facebook, our website, those are great places to get all of the stuff that we've been doing. Give us a call, send us a message, let us know that you watched this, comment on the post, let us know that you watched it, let us know what we can do better, let us know if there's something that you want us to talk about, something that you want us to hit on. Let us know. We will do our best to get that incorporated. You all have a great rest of your night. Or if you watch this another time, have a great rest of your day. But we are finished, so we'll see you guys later.